How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is Eric Erickson here. Welcome, broadcasting live from WOKV in Jacksonville, Florida today. Here on the coast, I've got a hotel room on the beach. I've got an event tonight to honor veterans and then doing a bourbon tasting tomorrow for some donors. The Children's Hospital here, they did a great fundraiser earlier this year. Delighted to be with you. It's nice to come see an affiliate and get out of the house because my son has been sick and I landed. I got to the station. I called my wife. She too is now sick. It's spreading. I don't get sick anymore. But my kids got it. My wife's got it. Look, you're not going to get it from me because I don't get sick anymore. Now, famous last words, knock on wood. But, it's random aside. When COVID started, a buddy of mine who is a very prominent immunologist said, start taking 50 milligrams of zinc every day. That zinc gets in your cells, in basic explanation, not really the super scientific explanation, but basically zinc fills up your cells, viruses can't get in. So he said, start taking zinc. So I started taking zinc in, March of 2020. I have never had COVID. I haven't gotten that. Now I get the flu vaccine, but I haven't gotten the flu. I've gotten food poisoning twice. In fact, one time, 2 years ago now it was, I had to leave the show in the middle of the show because, the food poisoning hit in the middle of the show, and that was horrific because I had to drive home. That was horrific. But otherwise, I've been relatively healthy. I get occasional, I've gotten a sinus infection stuff, but everything's very minor. And the only thing I've done differently is I used to get sick I got all the germs. Hey, part of this is having kids too. You have kids and children are an incubator of hell. They come home from school with snot and boogers that they have eaten off of other kids' fingers, and they are immunocompromised, and everyone in your house gets whatever they have. And every 3 weeks, you get sick when you have kids, particularly if you have kids in daycare. When we were starting out with kids, ours were in daycare until Christy was able to stay home. And good Lord, I've never been so sick in my life. It's like you can measure the good days because every day sucks until you have this one day of, I'm not sick today. I guess I will be tomorrow. I started taking zinc, and every once in a while I get a little sore throat or something, but I move through it. Maybe this one will take me out. I don't know. But I was like, please, wife of mine, please go right now and get a Z-Pack and steroids from your doctor and start on it to try to help you rebound more. You're the one with lung cancer. Try to get ahead of this. So now I confess, I'm broadcasting live from Jacksonville, Florida. I feel now a little guilty knowing that my wife, who went to bed feeling fine last night, woke up this morning feeling like hell. And also, I got a hotel room on the beach. If I miss my flight tomorrow night, I could broadcast from Jacksonville on Friday too. I'm supposed to take my son to John Mulaney on Friday night in Atlanta, but if the flight got canceled in air quotes, and I couldn't get home until, Sunday. Got a hotel room on the beach. I'm fine. They're sick. It's a terrible burden to fly as much as I do and have irregular air travel problems. And I'm there with them in spirit. One of my wife's friends is right now calling her to tell her that I am plotting. No, I'm going to go home. I'll be fine, and I will take care of the family. And then next weekend, the weekend before Christmas, I'm going to Las Vegas to unplug for a few days. I got my Delta statement the other day, 30,000 miles in just the past couple of months. I have traveled a lot, and that's just by plane. By car, I got a new car in July with 4 miles on it when I drove off the lot from my buddy Jim Hardman's shop. I now have over 15,000 miles. I've done a lot of travel the last few months. I am ready for a break. But before we get to a break, we got to get to lots of other news. The program directors of America are saying, yes, please. So let's get to it. Again, I mentioned if you text Eric to 33777, you can get the show notes today for free. And you're going to want it because there is a big story on basically Vladimir Putin's plot to kill everyone. This news broke late last night. I'm going to go to the Daily Mail because it has the most in-depth story, though I kind of abhor the Daily Mail, which is just a gossip rag. But the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and others corroborate the details. Putin has been accused of orchestrating a chilling continent-wide sabotage campaign, including a plot to blow up cargo flights bound for the United States. Security services say their latest revelations show the Kremlin is no longer just waging war on Ukraine, but secretly targeting the West after attempting to burn down shopping centers, poison water supplies, and plant sleeper agents in Europe. Various fires and explosions around the continent, including a blaze in an East London Ukrainian-owned warehouse, have been pinned on the Russians. In July of 2024, I remember when this happened, parcels exploded in courier departments or courier depots in the UK, Germany, and Poland. Each bomb was powerful enough that had it detonated midair, it would have brought down a cargo plane. Security chiefs say the aim was simple: to create catastrophic loss of life, paralysis of international trade, and send a chilling message that no Western country is out of reach. Investigators discovered the group responsible still had around 6 kilograms of explosive material ready, which sources warned would be enough for the next stage of the scheme: attacks on flights to the United States of America. Officials fear the fallout could have dwarfed any terror strike since 9/11. But the aviation plot was only one horrifying piece of a broader tapestry. Across Europe, state investigators say sabotage attempts have included plans to derail crowded trains, discharge dams, poison water supplies, and even damage critical transportation and electrical infrastructure. In May of 2024, there was a fire at a shopping center in Warsaw. The Russians were to blame. Undersea cables in the Baltic Sea have been cut. Again, the Russians were tied to it in October. A Finnish court dismissed a case against a captain and senior crew of a Russian-linked tanker that had dragged its anchor on the sea bed, cutting the cable. The cost of repairing it was 60 million euros. Took months to complete. No idea why the Finnish court dismissed the case. 2 Ukrainian nationals were identified by Polish authorities as bombers involved in a railway sabotage attempt in Warsaw. They escaped, and it turned out they were actually tied to the Russian regime, not the Ukrainian regime. Now, I want to just take this and harken back to the second hour of the program. We have Chinese scientists in the United States who are operating a bioweapons laboratory with live Ebola and mice that had been altered to more mirror the human genome that were capable of carrying and spreading COVID-19. We have scientists at the University of Michigan who brought in a pathogen to infect roundworms in the soil, and other scientists also at the University of Michigan who were arrested for bringing in wheat blight. Somehow, a Chinese orange blight got into Florida, harming crops there. The Chinese have hacked our water infrastructure. They've hacked our power infrastructure. They have hacked our telecom system. They're so deep in our telecom system, I was talking to one senator who said he can't actually tell me our plans to get them out of it And I said, do we have plans to get them out of it? And he says, I can't tell you that. And I said, you could tell me if we had plans. You just couldn't tell me what those plans are. So I'm assuming we don't have plans to get them out of it. He says, I can't talk about it, but you can assume that. So they're in there. The Russians and the Chinese. The North Koreans have also been hacking American companies, along with the Russians. And then, of course, the Iranians are notorious hackers as well. You see the pattern here? Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, they're all engaged in the same sorts of operations, working in various ways together. And somehow there are geniuses in Washington who have access to the president and vice president who are trying to convince them that these countries could somehow, particularly China and Russia, be partners with us to some degree. That's insane. The Russians want a sphere of influence. And, there are people in Washington, in the Pentagon, and the State Department who say, why shouldn't they be allowed to have a sphere of influence? Okay, they should be allowed to have a sphere of influence. What if a country doesn't want to be in their sphere of influence and Russia wants them to be in their sphere of influence? What then? What if this country wants to be in our sphere of influence? Because I got an example for you. Poland. Poland wants to be in our sphere of influence. In fact, the national security strategy that the White House unveiled the other day suggests that we should build deeper relations with the Poles. But Vladimir Putin wants the Poles in their sphere of influence, and historically, Poland has been in the Russian sphere of influence. Between the German sphere of influence and the Russian sphere of influence, Poland's been in both. Poland has always wanted to be unique and independent. What about the Czechs? The Czechs are pretty pro-America. The Russians want them in their sphere of influence. The Russians have been gaming their elections, trying to get pro-Russian technocrats and politicians elected, and the Czechs keep rejecting them because there are still a lot of Czechs alive who remember what it was like to be behind the Iron Curtain. So they don't want to be in the Russian sphere of influence. Should they be? If Russia wants them in, what should we do? Do we just sit back and say, no, you guys, you all figure it out yourselves? NATO is meaningless at this point. Here's the point. The world's a complicated place. And though it's complicated, it doesn't take a lot of discernment to figure out who your friends are, who your allies are, who countries are you can deal with, and who countries are that are your rivals or enemies. One of the problems with the distrust of experts is that oftentimes the experts actually are right, and the reason conventional wisdom is conventional is because it's the wisdom that's actually usually right. And we have now gotten to be so contrarian in this country, we no longer trust any of the experts because some of the experts earned our distrust, particularly in healthcare, but not all of them. And yet we've transferred the distrust from one class to all classes. And we've decided if everybody thinks this way, they must be wrong. And you know where we're headed? We're headed with international foreign affairs and expertise the same where the left has gotten with family. Follow along with me here. G.K. Chesterton talked about the democracy of the dead. And essentially his point is that Western civilization and Eastern civilization all, through trial and error over thousands of years, ordered society in such a way that it was the most stable society. We went from polygamy to two-parent heterosexual nuclear households in the West as the most stable way to raise children. And along comes the left and says, who cares about that history? We want to do it this way. We want thruples, polyamory, and they-them pronouns, and no kids. And guess what's happening? The West is self-destructing. In the same way in the West, we realize with the Peace of Westphalia and the modern nation state, there are nations we can do business with or not. There are nations who will work with us or not. There are nations that have shared interests or not. And it's wild to think that we now have a group of people in D.C. who are like, you know what, we can upend all of this and we can build something new and better. It is progressivism within American foreign policy within the Trump administration. And they're going to get it as wrong as the progressives on the left. This Chinese deal to give NVIDIA chips to China is the Republican version of Barack Obama's Iran deal, thinking we can outthink the old and bring about something new. And the other side is smiling and laughing at us and waiting for us to give them exactly what they want. So how do I put this politely? I don't know that there's a way for me to put it politely. There is a demographic of middle-aged white woman on the right who loves her some Candace Owens. And I encounter them on occasion. Did you hear what Candace Owens, what about Tucker? Did you hear what they said? It's like, no, I don't listen to that crap. They're insane. They are insane people. And I think Tucker Carlson at this point hates the United States and is doing his best to destroy it. Candace Owens is just a nut job. I've always thought, Candace Owens was a rabid socialist who suddenly started getting traction on the right, so she switched all of her positions, and she's just an insane, rabid anti-Semite. And yet I hear all of these people, they're so desperate to defend her. Well, you haven't listened to everything she said. I don't have to listen to everything she said to understand she's insane and lies and tells these nonsensical stories, weaving elaborate conspiracy theories, and you people are just sitting on the soap operas. You know what you people who believe in Candace Owens remind me of? God bless her. My grandmother used to watch General Hospital and Young and the Restless. She would be on her old black AT&T one-size-fits-all rotary dial phone with her best friend Sybil Woodside, and they would talk to each other over the phone about what was happening to Victor Newman on Young and the Restless. And more than one time, my grandmother put him on the prayer list at church. A fictional human being. My grandmother put him on the prayer list at church because of what his kids were doing to him. That is you people listening to Candace Owens, and you've mistaken fantasy for reality. Erica Kirk is blowing her up on Fox News right now. Good for her for what Candace Owens is doing to her, Erica Kirk's family. Now, I must move on to Americans for Prosperity. They would love to get you involved nationwide as an activist fighting for common sense conservative reforms and freedom. Doesn't matter what state you're in. They got a chapter. They have engagement across the nation. They have been fighting for licensing and permitting reforms for energy to produce energy in this country more easily. They've been fighting for the president's tax cuts. They've been fighting for school choice. They've been fighting for the REINS Act that will rein in bureaucrats at the federal and state level and prohibit them from driving up costs to businesses without getting approval of the state legislatures and Congress. They just fight for common sense conservative reforms, and they'd love you to join the fight with them. You go to afpvolunteer.com, afpvolunteer.com. You sign up with Americans for Prosperity. If you just want to be highly informed about the state of play and good public policy out there, AFP can help you do that at afpvolunteer.com. If you want to get involved in the fight with convincing your neighbors or state legislatures or Congress to do the right thing, they can help you there as well. afpvolunteer.com. Get involved in the fight for freedom nationwide with Americans for Prosperity. I'm on the board of advisors for them. We would love to have you. afpvolunteer.com. Hello, welcome. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Let's go to the phones here. Chris, you are going to be up next on the show. Welcome.
How are you doing today, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I may not be able to put this in correct terminology, but maybe you can convert it where it's understandable. But I was thinking about it the other day and how much money is actually out there in like 401ks and retirement plans. And I wondered if the government could incentivize people by doing it at a lower tax rate, but to have people convert 401ks over to Roth IRAs earlier, sooner, more than later, so that they could take that tax money in and possibly pay down some of our debt, because obviously if our debt is at a lower rate, then our overall expenses for a country are lower as well.
Yeah, I gotta say, Chris, you completely lost me on that one. So you want people to be able to convert their 401ks to Roth IRAs?
That's correct, because if you do that currently, you have to go ahead and pay the taxes on it at this point in order to do so.
Okay. So incentivize people doing it so then Washington gets the tax revenue.
Correct.
And then will you assume they would use the tax revenue to pay down the debt?
I would like it if that's what they did, but I wouldn't assume that would be what they would do with it.
That was the disconnect here, because they've got all this tariff revenue that's come in, and we're supposedly going to use that to pay down the debt, and instead we're going to bail out the farmers and everything else. I think that until we get to the crisis and we're at the breaking point, they're not going to do anything. I appreciate the idea. You encourage people to roll over, although if people don't want to roll over and they want to keep their 401k, they don't have to pay the tax. If they do pay the tax, it goes to D.C. That is outside my wheelhouse. I will just say this. What is inside my wheelhouse is a knowledge of how the system works. And they're not going to use that tax revenue to pay down the debt. They're going to spend it to try to get votes from you and me. They're going to bribe us. What is it? De Tocqueville said that the Republic will be fine until Congress realizes he can use the people's money to bribe the people. That's what's going to happen. But more than that, I had Mitch McConnell at the gathering last year. It never had a big sit-down conversation with McConnell like that before. I've been a critic of his in the past. We've made some inroads together. We appreciate each other and respect each other, even if we disagree. Put it to you that way. But I asked him about the financial crisis that's coming. He says, "Oh, yeah, it's coming." He says, "And we are going to go off the cliff." I said, "Well, that's a really pessimistic take." He says, "You don't understand how Washington works. Both sides know we need to fix the problem before we go off the fiscal cliff. But both sides also know that whichever side fixes the problem, the other side is going to use the fix because it will be painful against them. So neither side has an incentive to fix the problems before we go off the fiscal cliff. When we go off the cliff together, we will have incentive to work together to fix the problem, to minimize how far down the cliff is. It could be 1 foot. It could be 100 feet. It'll take both sides working together to be able to make sure it's only a 1 foot drop, not a 100-foot drop. But we can't until we begin the drop." Wasn't exactly an optimistic take, but it was, in fact, the honest take. He knows it. Now, I need to comment on something, and this is random before I move on to other news, because I didn't comment on it yesterday, and I feel the need to comment on it. Philip Rivers. If you don't know who Philip Rivers is, well, he used to be a quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, and then he moved to Mississippi, and he became a high school football coach. And now he's the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. They had to bring him back because, well, they had a great quarterback. Their quarterback tore his Achilles tendon. And their backup quarterback might as well be somewhere else. It's a kind of damning indictment on their backup quarterback when they're calling a 45-year-old out of retirement from Mississippi. 5 years he's been retired. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And he's in his 40s. And by the way, here's the interesting thing I read, that if he is able to just get like 20 yards, that he'll actually beat Peyton Manning's record for quarterbacks over 40. I saw somebody on Twitter say that wouldn't it be great if Tom Brady's helmet was like a Green Goblin helmet, and it just kept whispering to him from the closet, "Tom, you want to be back on the field, Tom. Tom, you loser. You've got to be back on the field. You've got to get." We could have Tom Brady and Rivers out there battling it out, the battle of the 40-year-olds. For those of us who are reaching like peak midlife at 50, it would be encouraging to see that there's something in there for the old guys. Although I'm reminded that statistically speaking, I'm no longer middle-aged because I don't expect to live to 100, so I'm therefore old. Every time I get up and my heel hurts. I mean, you know the downside of middle age. It is true. My father called me when I was 40, when I turned 40. He woke me up in the morning early. He was clearly, it's like 5 a.m. his time. I've also noticed, why is it that old people, the older they get, the less they sleep? At some point, they're like running on negative sleep. They're like 24 hours up because, I mean, he used to get up at like 8, and then he got up at 7, and then he got up at 6, and then he got up at 5, and now he's up at like 4 a.m. When do you sleep? You don't sleep. I don't know what it is, and he's not alone. It's older people are like that. They're all insomniacs. And he called me, and it had to be 6 a.m. my time, so it was 5 a.m. his time, and he wanted me to be welcome to 40 by knowing that it all gets harder from here. It's true. Well, most things do. But you find these parts of your body you didn't know exist because they hurt now. You had no idea. For those of you younger than me, I just want you to be advised that at some point you're going to wake up and you're going to feel a pain and you're not going to know what it is, and you're going to go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to say, well, it's your hastablustiasia. And you're like, I don't know what the hastablustiasia is. And the guy's like, well, you wouldn't because you hadn't gotten to that age yet, but now you're at that age. That's what it is. It's in like your lower torso somewhere buried behind your appendix, and you must have eaten garlic last night because now it's triggered. It's like, what do you do? Physical therapy, surgery, either one, but whichever one you choose, it's not going to get any better. It's just life now. Accept it. You all know I'm telling you the truth. So I've got this bone spur on my heel. I'm like, this is my personal Vietnam, which is what Donald Trump said, except he was talking about avoiding STDs in the 70s. True story. Yeah, Donald Trump one time said that avoiding STDs in the 70s was his personal Vietnam. Yes, well, this bone spur. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, you can do surgery, you can do physical therapy, but I'll tell you, it's not really going to get any better. So why bother? I thought about just amputating my foot, but that would be a problem. But here comes this guy who's 40-something years old, 45 or so. He's been out of the NFL for 5 years. He's been a high school football coach in Mississippi. And he's going back into the NFL. Don't ever tell me football is not awesome and America's not a great place to live. And that actually is my intentional segue into, we have a lot of people on the internet these days. A lot of people on the internet. And they really seem to loathe our country. Think about Tucker Carlson. He's now spinning this old communist tale that FDR allowed Pearl Harbor to happen so that he could drag us into war. I heard that for years, and it's always from wackadoo progressives who hate the United States. This elaborate conspiracy theory. Yes, there actually was data out there that we knew something was coming. And they spin that into, well, they knew it was Pearl Harbor. They let it happen because they needed America to get into the war, and the American people didn't want to do it. Yes, they wanted our Navy wiped out to get us into World War II. It only takes a little bit of logical thinking to dispel the rumor. But they want to believe in fantastical thinking to hate America. They want you to hate the country. It's very easy for progressives to hate the United States right now because they're not in charge. I value patriotism when they're in charge. I've always found it fascinating that it doesn't matter whether Republicans are in power or not. More than 80 to 85% of them always view this country awesomely, 90+% when they're in charge. And with progressives, it's slightly above 50% when they're in power, and it's way down at about 25% when they're out of power. Who is in charge of Washington, D.C. should not be the determining factor on whether you love this country or not. It just simply shouldn't be, because, by the way, your local city council is far more impactful to your life on a daily basis than Washington, D.C. Nobody cares who their mayor is. In fact, what we're seeing right now is a lot of Republicans aren't participating in local politics at all because they're single-mindedly focused on Washington, D.C. And they're getting their butt kicked across states. Our country is awesome. We live in the greatest country. And I don't say that because I live here. I say that because I've been to most of the other ones. We live in the best country. I have a great deal of respect for Rich Lowry, the editor of National Review, and I heard him say one time, yeah, everybody believes their country's the best. I believe my country's the best because it's my country and I'm a patriot. And but everybody believes that. It's what you're supposed to believe. I don't believe it because I'm from America. I believe it because I've traveled the world, and I can tell you there's no other country on planet Earth where people are dying to go to those countries. There's no other country on planet Earth where people will stow away in the wheel section of a 747 hoping to survive to land in the United States and fall out onto the tarmac and praise the Statue of Liberty. No other country has that. No one is dying to go to Qatar except Tucker Carlson. There are a lot of people from Qatar who would love to come here. A lot of people from India. A lot of people from China. And not the ones who just want to come here and spy, the ones who want to escape the communists. We live in the greatest country on the planet. And too many people forget that. Too many people take it for granted. One of the difficulties is having to prove negatives. Like, for example, I had this debate on my flagship station, WSB, the other day with the afternoon host, Eric Von Hassler. We were talking about America's dominance in the world and it's too expensive. His take was kind of it's too expensive and we don't need American soldiers everywhere and on and on and on. And my take was you've got the luxury of being able to say that because we haven't experienced the alternative. I've got to defend the negative case. The negative case is the unknown case. It's the case I pray we never have to know. And that is, it's easy to say it's too expensive for us to lead the world. Because you can say it without having to experience the costs. Because if we're not the leader of the free world, our exchange rate advantage goes away. When money is transferred into dollars, we get a preferred exchange rate. Saves us money. All global trade is conducted in dollars. China is trying to disrupt that right now because it gives us such an economic advantage. We have inflation that's higher than elsewhere, but it's still less than everywhere else. We have labor problems in this country, but still better than everywhere else. And it's all because the entire world is built around the American financial system. And it's built around the American financial system because the American military is everywhere, keeping everybody safe. When the Russians want to trade globally, their bank transactions route through the United States. When the Chinese want to trade globally, their bank transactions are routed through the United States because it's easier to do business around the world in dollars than anything else. And we get that because we lead the world. And if we give up on leading the world, all of that goes away. And your costs go up. Your exchange rate costs go up. Your trade costs go up. Your interest rate costs go up. Your inflation goes up more than it already is. Related to that, the Federal Reserve has just cut interest rates by 1/4 point again. This is just happening. Federal Reserve deeply divided, 3 dissents. One wanted to cut more and voted against a 1/4 rate cut, which means he probably actually didn't want to vote, but he was a Trump appointee and he didn't want Trump to know. He wanted a 1/2 point cut, so he opposed the 1/4 point cut because he'd rather get a 1/2 point or instead of a 1/4 point. That reads to me like Stephen, what's his name, Manfred or whatever. He's not really a fan of lowering interest rates. 2 governors didn't want to lower interest rates because they're afraid that inflation's still a big issue. But the Federal Reserve has cut interest rates another 1/4 point. The markets like it. They're signaling, however, that this is probably it. Probably no more rate cuts coming. Concurrent to all of that, our inflation, however high it is still lower than anywhere else because the United States leads the world. It's very easy to say we should pull back from the rest of the world. But it's very hard when you actually do, and I hope we don't. But regardless, it's just another good time to remind people that contrary to what you hear from the Candace Owenses of the world, or the Tucker Carlsons of the world, and the far left wackadoos of the world, we actually are the greatest country. The greatest country that ever was. The greatest country that probably ever will be. It's us right now, and we should appreciate that. 10 kids. Wow. Philip Rivers, 10 kids. I can understand why he wanted to go get tackled in the NFL. He needed a break. Christmas is coming. It's getting expensive. I got to go get tackled by some guys. Wow. God bless him. Well, what a neat opportunity, though. You're a high school football coach in Mississippi. The high school football season is over. It's like, kids, going to be gone for a while. Coach Rivers got to go play football in Indiana in the snow. Not getting a whole lot of snow down in Mississippi where he is. What a neat situation, though. It just, I continue to be fascinated by these NFL stories as we get into the playoff season, and sadly as well, mindful of the fact that we're headed back into that sad season of the year where there's no sports worth watching. You know, you do get into that couple of week thing where there's no hockey or baseball or NFL. There's just something the kids call basketball that I don't watch. And occasionally there's that soccer thing. And boy, the president has stirred the pot, referring to it as actual football, and that maybe we should call football something else. No, football is football. Soccer is soccer. I like the president's his desire to flatter everybody. It actually is kind of endearing. You go meet with the president and he'll bust your chops a little bit. He's done it with me, but then he flatters you too. He's very good one-on-one flattering you. It's very, dare I say, Bill Clinton-esque. If you ever heard the legions of stories about how Bill Clinton would flatter people and draw people to his side just through his flattery, there is something very similar to what the president does in that regard. Being flattering with a lot of people he can draw to his side. As one-on-one, you are the center of the universe when you're one-on-one with the president of the United States. And he flatters you, but please stop with the we should abandon American football and call soccer football. Please stop. Now, let me tell you about Hillsdale College. They'd love to expand your mind and horizons with their great classes. They've got a great one on capitalism. I think it's like 7 classes. Each class is a 30-minute video with their great faculty. They've got some on Aristotle and ethics, the founding of the country and the Constitutional Convention, the early Roman Republic, the fall of the Roman Empire, history, literature, science, philosophy, political science, economics, mathematics. They got them all at Hillsdale College. All you do is go to Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. You sign up with Hillsdale College today. It's completely free. You don't even pay for it. You get these great classes with their great faculty, and you don't have to pay a penny. You get a certificate of completion when you're done, and you get smarter about something, whether it's C.S. Lewis or Shakespeare or the Book of Genesis or the early American Republic. They got them all there. ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up with Hillsdale College today and start getting smarter.